Welcome to the Power Rack Podcast, episode number 7. I'm your host, Todd Beecraft. Before we get started here with my guest that I'm very excited to bring in the studio, I just want to thank everybody for all the people that have watched the prior episodes and who might be watching now on the live. I want to remind you to go to my website, trapauthority.com. That's where you can catch past episodes. And please, while you're watching, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel because that really helps us out, helps us with the YouTube algorithm on putting us out there more and getting us more views, all that. So I'm excited for today's guest. Highly anticipated one, I might say at that. Let's go ahead and bring her in here. Sharaya Johnson, formerly Sharaya Kenady, the daughter of powerlifting legend Doyle Kenady. And Sharaya, how are you doing today, first of all?
I'm great. How about yourself?
Awesome. It's very much a pleasure of mine to have you on the show. Before we get started with the questions and stuff I have for you, I just kind of want to do a kind of a brief history of how your father impacted me personally and the whole, sport of powerlifting here in the Northwest. A lot of people know that Doyle, of course, created the West Coast Open, established in December of 1981. And that's the most legendary contest that still sporadically kind of continues on today. But whether it happens on a certain year, it doesn't happen on a certain year, everybody knows, everybody that's involved in Northwest powerlifting has heard of the West Coast Open. And definitely one of the legacies your dad has left. I want to get rid of this thing here real quick. The one thing I want to talk about is he put on a lot more contests than just the West Coast Open. I definitely want to put that out there. I mean, there was, back when I was in high school, this is 1982, March of 82, he put on the Northwest High School Bench Press Championships, which to this day was the biggest high school bench press championships ever, because it was held in Salem, Oregon, and high schools from all over the state, Northwest really, because some out of Washington, Vancouver, Washington stuff were there. And so he put on stuff like that, and a lot of class 2 and class 3 meets, which you don't even hear of anymore, which I think is a little unfortunate. That a class 3 meet was for ranked beginners. The first contest I ever entered was a class 3 meet, and it kind of gave you a chance to kind of get a feel of the judging, this and that, and you went against people that were really your level. Then there was class 2, then there was the open division. And typically there was, to go from class 2 to open, there was somewhat of a qualifying total. You could go with that or not. It wasn't really enforced real heavily, but if you thought you were good enough to go and compete against the guys in the open, it was pretty cool. And your dad put on all those contests, and really that's what built powerlifting in the 80s. Your dad competed in the 70s, of course, I'm sure you know that, but the 80s is where powerlifting in the Northwest really exploded. And in my mind were the best years of powerlifting, which I call the golden years. And so that being said, that was how your dad impacted me in Northwest powerlifting. Everybody knows, of course, that your dad is most famous for his 903 deadlift. This is the contest it was done at, and he became the first man to deadlift 900 plus pounds and in front of international judges. He made the cover of Powerlifting USA with that deadlift, which was a big deal. This is a very famous Powerlifting USA cover. He's missed, of course, and the magazine itself is missed too, I'll tell you, because it really was a neat thing to document where you ranked in the Northwest as opposed to just the local stuff. Anyway, let's get to you. First of all, when were you born?
I'm a 90s baby, 1990.
Okay. I know your dad passed away in 1999, so you would have been how old at that time?
I was about 8.5.
Okay. What are some of your early memories of your father?
One of the ones that I have is that he worked Christmas tree and logging towards the end of his life, and he'd work late and it'd be cold outside, and I'd be working on like homework at the kitchen table, and he would always egg me on. He'd come over and put his cold hands down the back of my shirt and ask if my hands were cold, and of course, I'd squirm away. And always remember that. There was one time I do remember thinking that my dad is big and fat. He probably can't run very well. So I challenged him to a sprint contest up the driveway. And safe to say, he was actually surprisingly fast. I definitely lost that one. I also remember that he always brought home candy. There was a local store very close to our house that he would drive by on his way home from work. And he'd, bring my sister and I home candy bars after work and, little things like that. Back when the WWE was actually WWE, we would watch that together. And of course, I would think that I was cool and bad, and I would jump off like the bed and try to get him, but I was never very good at it. So little things like that.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Those are great memories. And I, put up a couple of pictures if you just want to comment on them, like this one. Where are you guys at here?
I want to say we're probably at Detroit or maybe Crater Lake.
Okay.
He enjoyed boating.
Oh, okay. And there's this cute little picture.
I think that was one of our Christmases, judging by my dress.
Wow, that's great. And we'll go one more from when you were young. Falling asleep.
This one is probably my favorite. So my grandparents built their dream home up the river in Mill City. And my dad did a lot to kind of help out with the construction of that. So I also remember hanging around my grandparents' house as they were building that. And this was one of the days that they were working on the house. And I knew this picture existed for a really long time, but we couldn't find it. But my mom found it a couple years ago. And so it's definitely one of my favorites.
Well, I appreciate you sharing it with me and let me share it with the audience. Let's get into because you're, of course you powerlift now, and we'll get to that, but you're a very athletic individual. So let's start, like, how did you first, and when did you first start getting into athletics of any type? Like, and what was it?
It was really probably high school track. And the motivation for that was my dad was a thrower before he was ever a power lifter. Yeah. If you look at Western Oregon's website, he still holds school records in the shot put and the discus from 1972. So originally that's what motivated me to even contemplate shot put and discus. So I started with that in high school and kind of got into the weight room a little bit that way. And really the only reason I ever wanted to go to college was to throw. People would be like, oh, what are you going to college for? Track and field. I really didn't know what I wanted to do besides just be a collegiate athlete. So went to Concordia University, Portland. And I ended up becoming a hammer thrower or something with my low center of gravity. Worked out pretty well for me. So I got to train under Mac Wilkins. He's an Olympic gold medalist and ran the throws program up there, and got the opportunity to have a lot of different coaches from a lot of different backgrounds, and kind of got experience that way. I ended up doing 5 years there. I had an injury redshirt year where I actually ended up fracturing my spine. And it kind of worked out for the best. Most people don't tell you that you need to really hustle to get school done in 4 years, but it worked out better for me. And while I was at Concordia, I was an 8-time national qualifier, 4-time All-American, and a 2-time national champion in the hammer throw and as a team.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. A lot of really great memories from track.
Yeah. What's this
I was
picture
not
here?
a very good shot putter, though. I tried so hard.
Well, you mentioned your low center of gravity, and we all know you have very strong legs, of course, from your father. How tall are you?
I'm 5'2".
Okay, 5'2". I was imagining somewhere in there. And as long as we're talking about how athletic you are, there's a picture I really loved on your Facebook. So I'm like, I'm showing her that. I want her to look at that. How high up are we here?
I actually don't remember. This was a trampoline park in Utah. Probably no more than like 4 feet or so. And I guess I shot myself in the foot. To backtrack, I did do gymnastics when I was younger. I can't exactly remember the years of that, but I think we did it for about 5 or 6 years. So I also have that gymnastics background.
Yeah, that's impressive. There was another picture of you, but that one was my particular favorite. So you went, I don't know if it kind of bounced back and forth a little bit for you, but so you obviously graduated college. What was your degree?
Exercise and sports science.
Awesome.
And kind of similar situation. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with that degree because it is kind of a precursor to do other things like PT or PA, but I found the athletic training room while I was in college, and I really liked doing that. So I kind of got my feet wet with sports medicine, which basically encompasses the prevention, recognition, and treatment of athletic injuries. So I thought that was a really cool way of keeping my foot in the door. So I went to go get my master's degree in athletic training from Weber State over in Ogden, Utah. And I did that for 2.5 years to get my master's.
That's impressive. And with sports and athletics and the whole fitness industry just blowing up these days and only going to get bigger and stronger as time goes on. What a profession to be in. We need people like you. Because people like me that are older now keep getting hurt.
Yeah. So, there's always the business of injury that kind of will keep us back.
So somewhere in the mix, you got into bodybuilding. So let's talk about that a little bit.
After I got my undergrad degree, I was kind of chunky. And
speaking of that,
my mom was always interested in bodybuilding when I was kind of coming up to. She had competed in some bodybuilding shows when she was younger. So I kind of wanted to push the limit. I wanted to lose some of the weight. I wanted to see what I can do. And so I did that. 2014 was the year that I did that. We did a 17-week prep. I lost tons and tons of weight. I did part of it while I was in Utah and then part of it when I came home. And my mom basically did the whole thing with me after I came home. So we both got very, very lean during this time. I competed in both women's figure and women's physique. I think I placed 4th and 5th. But yeah, it was an experience.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think anyone had better spinal erectors than you. Look at that. That picture of your mid back is just amazing to me. I can't believe the thickness there. Have you done a few deadlifts in your day?
Maybe. A lot of that back canyon though is genetic. I do say.
Yeah. You mentioned your mom, and actually, your mom, I had the opportunity to meet her once at one of the West Coast meets that we had, and she's just a very sweet lady, Nancy. And so I wanted to include this picture. Great shape too.
Yeah. Like I said, she did most of that prep with me. You know, if I had to do an hour of cardio, she was on the treadmill next to me. And if I had, upper body splits, she was doing the same thing and kind of pushing herself just as much as I was.
Yeah. How's she doing these days? She's good?
She's good.
Awesome.
Good. I think she's listening. But she's good.
Hi, Nancy.
She's keeping busy.
Yeah, good. Well, now is what we're waiting for. Let's go from all that into your powerlifting. Talk to me about your powerlifting. How'd you get involved?
Well, I basically decided I didn't want to die wondering what if. So after bodybuilding, I was really kind of just spinning my wheels. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Having been an athlete for so long, it was really hard to take off that hat and not have anything to kind of fill that space for me. So it was just over 2 years ago. Today is actually like my 2-year powerlifting anniversary, I guess, if you want to call it that. I called Soren and I said, hey, I'm very curious. I wonder if I would be any good at this. Would you be willing to take me on? And then I had my first workout with him like the very next day. My first meet was the 2019 West Coast Open. Downing's kind of revamped and had that meet again. My dad's logo and stuff was on the shirt, the old school one with him deadlifting with the bear behind him. So that was my first meet. I squatted 314. I think I benched 203 and I deadlifted 347.
Wow.
And then from there, we did another meet in February, the Pacific Northwest Championships. And I want to say I squatted 336, benched 209, and deadlifted 364. And at that point, we really wanted to go on and get some experience at the national level. And of course, after February last year, everything went crazy with all of the COVID stuff. So originally nationals was supposed to be in June 2020, but they pushed it back till September 2020. So there was a lot of people who dropped that didn't end up making it out to the meet. So it was me, Soren, one of my former training partners, Beth, and her partner that came with us, and we all went to Columbus, Ohio in September. And we did the thing. You know, a lot of people didn't show up, but we did. I ended up squatting 352, benched 215, and deadlifted 397. So those are my meet bests. Those were PRs too at the time. They're all Oregon State records, and I do have an international elite total within the USPA drug tested division at 75 kilos.
Well, that's awesome. So that would have been your last meet, right? Okay. So your second to the last meet, was it at this one here then?
That was my very first one. That was the West Coast.
Oh, it was your first meet. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like the awards. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
You got the gold.
Yeah. Actually, they skipped me. They announced 75 bronze and 75 silver, and then somebody must have had a brain fart, and they skipped me. So we had to go pester Sam afterwards and ask for the plaque.
Wow. Yeah. Sam, somebody won the contest. You realize that, right? But
well, it was such a long day. We were there from 7:30 till 9:30 at night. So at that point, we were like, can we go? Can we go eat now? We're very hungry. So
speaking of long contests, that reminds me, matter of fact, the 83 West Coast Open, they broke it up. Oh man, I have something I could show you how they broke that up, because it leads into the contest being long. This was the day, the 1983. So you can see the first day, Saturday, was 114 pounders up to 181. And just to give you an idea, because back then the bar increased like 5 pounds at a time. You waited your turn until the bar got to the weight. There was no round system like there is now. So the meet ended. They were handing out trophies at 11 o'clock at night, and then it started. I don't see the start time. Weigh-ins started at 10. So yeah, it was a long contest. But you mentioned a few minutes ago Downing's gym putting on that contest and stuff. There's rumors going around that Downing's gym is the gym that was able to obtain a lot of your father's equipment from the original, like Kenady's gym, or at least the last Kenady's gym. Is that true?
I'm not entirely sure. I know Barb Young ended up with a lot of it. I actually have my dad's old squat standards, the blue ones. Those are in my garage right now.
Awesome.
But besides that, I'm not entirely positive where a lot of it ended up. I did go raid my mom's shop again for this weight tree that she had offered us. And in that weight tree, we had found these really old 44-pound blue plates. And, you know, they're a little rusted over, but they kind of looked like cool originals. So those are also sitting in the garage out there.
Wow.
So I think it's kind of spread out, but I'm not entirely sure where all of it ended up.
That's what a lot of us kind of wondered, because, you know, where did so much of that, because there was a bunch of squat racks and, you know, of course, all the weights and and the bench presses. And a lot of us always did wonder where the equipment ended up at, you know, and I had heard rumors it was Downing's gym, like has some of the bars or something that your dad once had. But, anyway, let's kind of lead into the West Coast Open. The very first one, of course, was 1981, and I hadn't even competed yet myself, and I went and watched this contest, and it was, again, the first one is in December of 81, and for the people that are watching, this is the 40th anniversary of this contest, everybody. So we're kind of celebrating, and what a year to have you on as a guest, the 40th anniversary of your dad's contest. So this meet, I remember going and watching it. It was like a week or so before a class 3 contest that I was entered in here in Portland. And oh my gosh, your dad lifted in it. Jeff Magruder. I mean, all name after name. Ray was there. Ray Hetlage, Mark Kaplan, guys, Bill Kepler. I mean, it was just mind blowing to watch this particular contest. And I knew from that moment on, I hadn't even competed yet. But I'm like, oh, I'm loving this. This is a sport for me, but I'm pretty intimidated. These guys are monsters, you know? So, but it was, what a neat. So thank God for the class 3 meet. I entered like a week later. So that's pretty. And then we go on to I did enter 1982. I just don't have the program for it, but here's what the program looked like for 1983. So that Dave Shaw, your dad always enjoyed bringing Dave Shaw. I believe he was out of California, and your dad always liked bringing him up. And he'd always try to get this lifter, Tom McGee, from out of Canada down, who actually went on to compete in strongman contests and did the world's strongest man contest one year, as your dad did too. And speaking of WWF back then, Tom McGee went on to be a WWF wrestler. So yeah, your dad always enjoyed bringing those names down too. But so you mentioned, so the legacy of the West Coast, you know, there's been different ones of us, like me and Rick McClung and the Downey's Jim, I believe, and a few other people try to keep it going just kind of for the legacy of it. Gus Rethwis was the first one that I worked with to bring it back after it was dormant for a couple of years. It's like, we got to keep the name of this thing alive, you know? And so what are your thoughts on people trying? Are you kind of for that, or kind of wish people wouldn't try to keep? What are your thoughts? I'm just curious.
I'm definitely for it. It's pretty cool to see my dad's face all over, like when I go to these meets, to see his face all over the shirts, the meet shirts. Yeah. And I think it's just cool to provide any sort of chance I can to talk about him, because I think a lot of people have maybe forgotten, or just, you know, maybe don't know the history of the sport out here. And so I think anything to kind of keep his image and his name out there, that's totally fine by me. Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. It's got that, all that as your blessing, you know, because we try to do what we can. For me, it's again, the 80s were in my opinion, the best years for at least Northwest powerlifting. And I really like to have people learn what the pioneers did, you know, learn their history, their powerlifting history. And if you're going to lift in Oregon, you really should know your history. And that's just me. And so I try to keep it alive the best I can. And it's nice that other people are jumping into, and that you yourself, I mean, look at you, I mean, keeping it alive by competing and coming on shows like this and willing to talk about it. The Doyle, so once a year, apparently over in Salem, there's a tribute contest to your father. Do we want to talk about that a little bit?
We just recently started that. So we did it 2019, before everything got really chaotic, and it was really just a deadlift party. We were like, hey, come out, you know, if you want to pull some weight, we're going to be set up for that. And then after we were done lifting, and I mean, you could do block pulls, you could do pulls from the floor. It was just a training day, come train. If you wanted to go for a big PR, I mean, we're here for that. And then afterwards, we just sat and we talked and we shared stories. There should actually be a couple videos of that on my Facebook page too, where I kind of, the first year I didn't lift in it. Just kind of some montage videos. And then the second year I lifted in it. And then of course, with all of the craziness that came with 2020, we didn't have it this year, but we're hoping that things are open enough that we can have it. Cause it's just a nice time. Come deadlift, come tell stories, just talk about them.
Yeah. So when do you typically hold that, or when who all holds it? Who does put it on?
Soren Sorensen is the one who usually puts it on. And then I'm just kind of there to do whatever I can to help. And Jim Covert always comes and has nice things to say. Mark Kaplan was there last year. Phil Sherman came down. So last year was definitely much bigger of an event than the year before, but it's nice to see people and to hear stories. And to just be able to have fun and just remember.
Yeah.
So,
what time of year is it typically hosted?
We actually try to hold it around the time that he set his world record. So sometime in April is usually when we try to do it. Yeah.
Gosh, think you guys might be able to pull it off this year? April's coming up real quick.
I would love to.
It's cool.
Drag a bunch of weights to the street and some rubber mats. Let's go. Let's do it.
Seriously, nothing. Might as well. I mean, keep it going, keep it alive. At least, I mean, people understand nowadays. Sticking a little bit on track of the West Coast here before we get off topic on that. This was a local publication that went around, and as you can see, this was the '83 West Coast Open again. The results and everything made this little newspaper that went to all the gyms in the Northwest. It's pretty cool, and made the cover. Thought you might enjoy seeing that. But you mentioned Soren a couple times, so it must have been kind of neat for you to be trained by Soren in the respect that was really the last person your dad trained in all the years. Because that was really the end of, basically, it was Kenady's gym at that point was a very small place, and I remember going there once, and Soren was there actually, and so for him to train you, I'm sure that must have been kind of pretty sentimental for you.
Yeah, it's special for me to learn from people who've learned from him.
Yeah.
To just get as close as I can to that source, right. And to kind of go back to throwing, Soren coaches at Willamette. He's their throws coach. And so when I had originally gotten interested in throwing the hammer, I called Soren, said, hey, would you teach me how to throw the hammer before I go off to college so I have some sort of base? So he was kind of the first person to help me with the hammer. And then same thing with powerlifting. I called him and asked him if he'd be willing to help. So he also kind of gave me that start in powerlifting.
Okay.
So it's nobody else I'd rather have handle me at these things. So it's definitely really cool. Special.
Yeah, that is cool. Do you know offhand the original Kenady's gym, like what year your dad opened that gym? Have you kind of researched that at all? The very first one?
I don't. I know a couple of locations. I know that I actually now live very close to the one that he had in Kaiser. I know that there was one on like State Street at one point in time that was a little bit sketchy. And to go back even further, I know he had it out of his garage for a very long time. And I think the rumor that I had heard was he originally opened a gym was to get people out of his garage. But that's all I know.
I'm just wondering, because I'm not sure if 1982, 83, which is, I'll show you a couple pictures of here, which I've shown before on Ray's episode, but I'd like to get your thoughts. I don't know if that was the original or if there was an original besides the garage one. I didn't even know about that one. I didn't know if there was an original before this one, but in 82, this is the one this was, I think, the most legendary one of all of them, because the amount of lifters during this era is when, actually, I'll show this one first. The amount of lifting, if I can get it to come, there we go. Lifters that came from this era, that 1982, because your dad held the 1982 junior nationals here in Portland. So, which was huge, USPF. And so the lifters during that era were the top lifters. And this was in the gym here, and you can see some of the squat racks, multiple ones, of course. And Saturdays were always deadlift day. This is Roger Sandvold. He was the top 165-pound lifter of that era. And he had a gym that I trained at called the Oregon Gym here in Portland, Oregon, which was the premier powerlifting gym here in Portland. And of course, they would still drive down on Saturdays and deadlift at your dad's gym. So it kind of gives you an idea. This, again, 1982. And one of the pictures that I really like is kind of shows the gym pretty well, what it looked at. And it's interesting because that's Steve Knight, and he was a 181-pounder. This is the first day. It was actually deadlift day. It's on a Saturday, but he was squatting, and he was training for the 82 senior nationals, and you're being trained by your dad. I believe he moved up here. think from California to be, to live here and then train with your father. And this is the day he did his first 700-pound squat. It was his last heavy workout before the 82 senior nationals, which he went on to squat 722 at the seniors and make the cover of Powerlifting USA magazine with that squat. And still the 722 squat at 181 is the record that still stands to this day here in Oregon. But it shows you. And then this one is from that same day in the gym. That lifter to the right is Pat Pointer. What an amazing lifter that guy was. Geez, 198, or he ended up going 198, or 165. I'd have to look at the records, which I do have here somewhere. But anyway, that's of course your father. I like his little sign. Memberships must be paid by the due date at the desk. No exceptions is what it actually said. Just his name, Doyle. So everybody paid their dues on time, needless to say. But it was neat. I talked in Ray's episode. I would go down there. I did lift there once because there was a little contest they had for more class 2 lifters, and I went down there and did that just so I can say I competed in that gym. But for the most part, I would go down there and learn from all those guys. And I found the best way to learn wasn't always necessarily to just do, because then you got to focus on yourself and worry about things like, is my foot placement right on the squat? This and that. I didn't want to worry about that. I just wanted to sit down, not say anything, and study those guys. And that's what I did. And I learned so much. And we'll go, when we get into a different part of the show here, I'm going to go back and talk about Steve Knight and the mental toughness he had, and so much I learned from him, from going down, meeting him at your dad's gym, and then coming back and sitting down with him and talking about stuff. It's really neat. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But so let's see. So actually right now you are, let me find something here. Looking for a certain picture that I got at the last minute last night. Oh, here we go. You're training for a contest right now.
Yes,
let's talk
we're
about that.
6 days out. Next Saturday. Yeah. So this has been a more challenging prep for me. So with everything that was happening with COVID, my schedule was way different than it would be in a normal year. Normally I work afternoons and evenings, but with everything happening, I was able to train with my group at like 4 in the afternoon every day. And then since sports have been picking back up in Oregon, my schedule changed. I lost my group. I lost my afternoons and evenings. And so I have been training by myself in the garage in the mornings. So it's definitely been a different experience this time around. It's not as easy when you're out there by yourself and it's cold and there's nobody to spot you and there's nobody there to encourage you. It's a very different feeling. My goal for this meet is first and foremost, I've been chasing 1,000-pound total since I got started in this thing. 1,000-pound total at 165. And for me, that's going to need to look roughly like a 360 squat, a 225 bench, and about a 415 deadlift. So kind of depending on where those kilo conversions end up, that's what I'm looking for this meet. I don't know that I'm going to have insane PRs. I mean, I'm always hopeful that I get to, but that's the goal. Things have been a challenge, and to kind of be able to do this despite all of the challenges of this prep. We'll see. I'm excited and nervous and anxious, and all of that rolled into one continual feeling. But.
Well, we root for you after the fact, because you post some of your training videos on your social media, and I've been watching those, and I am rooting for you, but you've already done the list at that point. But no, it looks like, I mean, for what you're having to deal with as far as training at home, looks like they're coming along pretty well. So.
Yeah, Soren watched the videos with me and he said, you're learning how to work through your sticking points. And, we kind of joke, because at that point, if you're on your own, it's bench or die.
Right.
Squat or die. So definitely motivate you to work through some of those things.
Are they going to allow spectators at this contest?
No, we get one wristband for one guest. So I think it's supposed to be pretty closed off, but there's supposed to be a live stream.
Oh, is there? Okay, well, you'll be posting. Will you be posting the information to that so I can share it with people too? Okay, awesome. When do you leave to go to? Are you going the night before then?
So my work schedule really stinks. They actually changed some things within the meet that changed the timing of weigh-in. So I am very, very much scrambling to try to figure out how to make that work. I work as a first responder type role, and finding coverage is incredibly difficult. So I'm trying to figure out how to make weigh-ins work for me. So I'll actually probably have to come back here that night and finish my football game and then head back over on Saturday. It's only an hour drive, so it's really not too bad.
Okay.
But perfect world, I probably would have taken a couple days off and stayed over there, but chaos and fire right now.
Well, let's anyone that knows me and has watched some of my past episodes knows that I'm really, really into the mental aspect of lifting, more so now than ever. But I shouldn't say that, because I've always have been. And back in my day, I mean, it's names like Wayne Dyer and Zig Ziglar and these guys, I'd listen to the cassette tapes as I fall asleep at night, trying to get positive motivation and a positive mindset for things. I do a lot of visualization, things like that. And going back real quick to the Steve Knight thing, the one thing when I spoke with him that I'd mentioned on a prior episode is when I went down there, I thought, man, I get to talk to Steve Knight, the best squatter at 181, and because that was the weight class I was in. And so I was all excited. He's like, yeah, come back next week, because he had just squatted at 700, and I asked, by the way, I asked your dad, can I take some pictures of this? He goes, as long as there's no flash and as long as you're not standing in front of the person. I said, oh, no problem. So I had your dad, it's okay to take those pictures. Normally they weren't really allowing pictures to be taken in that back room like that. So that was actually a pretty neat thing that your dad allowed for me. But anyway, so I came back the next week thinking I'm going to leave there because we sat outside of the gym and at a table, and I'm got my notepad and I'm waiting for this big routine that's for Steve Knight to give me. And he really didn't. He went through a basic outline, but it was really all about the mind stuff and the strengthening of the mind. And I learned so much that day. And since then, Steve Knight has written books on that. And I highly recommend this book. Winning State, and he has it for different sports, but the strength sport one is just it's easy read. It's just an incredible book on mental toughness tactics, as he calls it. All that being said, I want to talk about what you do for goals, visualization, things like that. First of all, let's start with goals. When you go about setting a goal, which obviously you have some, you mentioned them already, how do you lay that out? I'm sure you don't just pick a number and with no plan go after it. So you pick some numbers and take me from there.
I try to keep it realistic. I think sometimes lifters will kind of have this fantasy of everything coming together absolutely perfect on meet day. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So I try to be very realistic about what I think I can hit. And I've done 360 a handful of times, so I know that I can squat. It's just a matter of bringing it over to the platform. Bench, I'm still just chasing that big girl bench because I know it's there. It's easier to do in the garage when you're not necessarily waiting for a press command. So I really just want that 225 bench or higher. I'd love to go 231. And then deadlift is actually the toughest for me, which is kind of a real kick in the pants considering who my dad was. And I actually usually don't tell people about that until after the meet. I don't talk about it until everything's done and the dust is settled, but I try to keep things realistic within like 105% of my current maxes. Is kind of how I set some goals. As far as the mental stuff, that's always the toughest, especially, like I said, being on my own by myself. You have a tendency to get inside your own head. And, there's days where 225 just flies and it's beautiful. And then there's days where you hit the rack 17 times and then you come back to your chest and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And as far as, like, I try to visualize it. That's one of those things that I always did with track and field, was trying to picture the perfect throw, how my winds felt, how my speed felt going into, the first turn, how it felt leaving my hands, how everything would feel when the ball left, those kinds of things. So it's kind of the same thing with lifting, is, figuring out, like, if I hit a sticking point, what are the things that I want to think about working through that sticking point, and then seeing myself successful completing the lift. Working through cues too, I have to remind myself that there's going to be, like, commands to try to integrate that in a part of my visual process. So just kind of repetitively going over what I want the lift to look like, what I want it to feel like with my commands, and kind of visualizing it too. Before nationals, I discovered a podcast by Stacy Burr, and she has a really nice meet day visualization one where she kind of just walks you through it, encourages you, and it kind of makes everything front and centered. And so I really enjoyed that one.
Good.
But at the same time, trying to keep things simple too, so I don't completely overwhelm myself with everything that's going on in my brain this close to a meet. So kind of a balancing act.
Yeah, I mean, and that's awesome that you actually partake in that form of mental preparation and stuff, because Bill Kazmaier once said in an interview that that's the biggest thing missing with today's lifters is that they tend to, like, just slam their energy drinks. Oh, I'm in beast mode now, and go off to the gym. Meanwhile, on the way to the gym, they're gabbing on their phones, or, through Bluetooth, whatever, or when they get to the gym, they're still on their phones, and there's so many distractions. And by this time, they're so over amped up from the energy drinks that they're not sitting down and relaxing, putting their mind where they need to be first. And so that it's nice to hear that you have what I call the champion's mindset. And I always like to ask someone that understands, who is a champion, and get their perspective as far as champion's mindset. What, on your way to the gym, which I get probably not very far these days since you're training in your garage. So, but even still, like, let's say a half hour before your workout, walk me through kind of what you're doing as far as, I mean, are you an energy drink girl, a coffee, tea, and then your mind, like as you start to head to the gym, whether it be in your car or just the walk to your garage, where's your head at?
Usually it's me and the husband will go take our dogs for a walk in the morning, and so that will kind of be our time to talk about the workout or things that we want to work on. Bo does this with me. He's always been my moral support and my buddy system, and he's always done the workouts every day. Ever since I decided I wanted to do this, he's been right there with me. Awesome. And he's a much more logical thinker than I am, so he's often the person who has to talk me off a cliff. And, hey, it wasn't this bad. This looked better than you think it did. So usually we'll kind of start our mornings with a walk with the dogs. We'll come back and, this probably isn't going to sound good, but we typically dome our pre-workout just straight to the mouth, swig some water, and then we'll head out to the garage.
Head shots.
Yeah. And then we're pretty big on making sure we get a good warm up, lots of mobility, lots of, like, prehab type stuff too, because we also work in the field of injury, trying to prevent our own. And, we usually probably warm up for a good 20-30 minutes before we ever put a bar in our hand. And sometimes I talk myself through the struggle, like, hey, it's going to be cold, this is going to feel really heavy, but this is what you have to do to get to where you want to be. So I try not to be very big on amping myself up. I've always looked to my dad as a role model, and to kind of watch the few videos that I do have of him where he's very calm, he's collected, he's not out there yelling and shaking or headbutting the bar, stuff like that. So I kind of try to emulate that in my own training too, so I don't look like a psycho and don't look stupid when I miss a lift after all of that. So, and I try to keep things very, very consistent. There was an interview where he had basically said, you train like you compete and you compete like you train. So I try to keep things very level across that board so that, come meet day, I'm not surprised or doing something completely different. And then go through the workout and get it done and on to the next thing.
I absolutely agree that your training, your contest performance is a reflection on your training. It's not, if you train like crap, it's not going to suddenly all come together the day of the meet, So I think that's a good statement that you made there. Your dad, Steve, going back to Steve Knight real quick, they were all the quiet psych up types. And you can tell that there was some deep stuff going on in their head before they were lifting. These guys that tend to Magruder was one of them, but sniff the ammonia and headbutt and carry on. There's so much energy being used up there, but it worked for them. But for me, what worked is following more the quiet mode with like Steve Knight. I again studied him like you did your dad, and the way he approached his squat and it worked for me. That style worked for me because I'm not a real aggressive, wild person anyway. I'm more quiet and introverted. And Ray Hetlage, who has his own psych, which was a little more up, but not crazy, throwing stuff around type, like some of these other people were. Some of the characters at your dad's gym, that's a whole nother topic there. There were some wild ones. But so let's talk about diet and nutrition. And yeah, I get that when you did the bodybuilding show, that would be an exception because it was an extreme diet and nutrition thing. I just kind of want you like now, like you're training for a powerlifting contest. What's your diet like? And then do you take vitamin supplements? And because you are a natural lifter, so do you rely on a lot of supplements? If so, do you want to plug any of them that you recommend? And just kind of talk about that.
I will kind of state that I do have a different diet than I think a lot of other power lifters would have. What was it? I think it was 2018 that I started noticing that I felt very sluggish and I had a lot of brain fog and I just didn't feel right, put on a lot of weight very quickly. So finally went to a doctor and I have a low functioning thyroid. And one of the options was to start the Synthoid, but I was told that once you start that, you're on it for life. And that really wasn't something that I was interested at this point. So I kind of really wanted to fix it with diet and nutrition if I could. So I started intermittent fasting. And you know what, like I said, this isn't for everybody. It's different. Most people probably wouldn't recommend it for performance or strength sports, but it works for me. And that's kind of one of the most important parts. So I don't usually eat until like noon or 1 o'clock on most days. I try to get most of my nutrients from real food because I think that's how it's intended to be. I think that's what's best for us. I definitely try to have as many vegetables as I can tolerate. I'm not a big veggie person. My grandma always told me that my dad had me eating steak and potatoes at 9 months old. So as an adult now, I struggle with vegetables, but I usually try to shoot for like the 0.8 to 1 pound of protein per body weight. Okay. So if I'm 165, trying to get 165 grams of protein in me, sometimes I don't get that, but it just kind of depends. I also tend to eat like a higher fat diet just because I feel like it works for me. I'm more satiated throughout the day. I kind of learned, while bodybuilding was an interesting experience, I kind of had the reverse diet where my carbs were a little bit higher and my fat was really low. And you could just tell my body it didn't like it. It didn't function very well off of it. So at one point I had played with keto, which is the super high fat, moderate protein, really low carbohydrate. And while that was not a lifestyle choice I could continue to make, I did find that my body liked higher fat. So I guess I have like a mishmash of diets. So I have pretty high protein, moderate fat, I would say moderate carbs. I'm always trying to, as best as I can, move my carbs like around my training cycles. But when I lift first thing in the morning, it is usually fasted, which isn't necessarily ideal, but I'm getting more and more used to it. I just have to do it early enough before my body realizes that it's almost mealtime. So it's different. I do take a couple of supplements. I take a thyroid support. I do take things like fish oil and turmeric, like a multivitamin and like magnesium, some of those things to kind of fill in the gaps there. But that's pretty much all I do. Sometimes if, like, say this week I'm trying to make weight and I have to be a little stingy with my food, I will supplement in a protein shake just because it's quick, easy. It's basically just protein, kind of help get me through when I'm hungry and stuff. But I try not to, I don't actually usually do a whole lot of protein supplements in my regular diet. It's usually just when I'm this close or if it's an emergency or something like that.
So I'll ask you about two different meals. Post-workout, what's your go-to?
Usually it's chicken and a bunch of vegetables or a bunch of broccoli and fruit and a little bit of cheese.
Okay.
It's usually what I stick with. Most of my carbs come from vegetables and fruit. Yeah, that's I mean, and like the residual stuff that's in peanut butter and things. So.
Ooh, peanut butter. I love peanut butter. So your last meal before you go to bed, what's typical for you?
Usually I think I gravitate towards beef for dinner lately. So like right now I've got some sirloin thawing. Tonight we'll probably do like a baked potato and some asparagus or some Brussels, but usually something like that, pretty light. I find that my body weight responds a lot better when my bigger meals are earlier in the day, and then I eat a little bit lighter through the evening. But I at this point, I probably will follow with like a nighttime snack, which will probably be like a protein shake and maybe like a rice cake and some peanut butter or something, just so I'm not waking up hungry. That sounds miserable.
Right. So we'll lead into sleep here in just a second by going here. So your last meal you just described. How long before you go to bed after your last meal?
I would say probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, it depends on the night too. So sometimes I'll have work or games going until just 7:30, and then I can get to bed early. Or sometimes it's like a football Friday night where I'm not in bed or at home until 11:30 or midnight. So it kind of varies depending on the sports season that we're in. But I try to keep it consistent because I think obviously crash dieting is dumb, but as long as you can keep things as like consistent as possible, I think that's better long term than any sort of like 8-week meal plan that people try to do.
Yeah, definitely the takeaway from this is listening to you describe how you eat and stuff is there is no, people want to be like on bandwagons. Oh, I'm doing keto or I'm doing this or that. The Atkins, whatever, but there really is not a cookie cutter diet for everybody. And you found what works for you. And, I find what works for me. And that's kind of really, it is. It's a lot of trial and error, experimentation. And then luckily for you that you did do that and you found out, the thyroid issue and got seeing a doctor with that. So that's something people need to do. And actually, before we go into the sleep thing real quick, you mentioned a doctor. So probably because of potential family history, I'm sure you get your blood work done at least annually and stuff like that, and have all your everything checked.
Yeah, and so far what I've been doing has made my numbers better. So
awesome.
I don't intend to switch anything up anytime soon because I think I found that consistency that works for me. So
that's awesome. The going into sleep real quick here. So your last meal, the hour and a half before you go to sleep. So then you mentioned the intermittent fasting. So you're not really a person that like will fast for a day or two. Your fasting is the long period after your last meal before bed into your morning, and then your workout, and then it's usually your post-workout meal that you'll eat again. How long of a time span is that?
Oh, I think
typically?
it's the 16 and 8 is usually what they'll
Okay.
call fast for 16, and then your
Oh,
open
okay.
window is hours.
Oh,
Sometimes it's
okay.
bigger just with, schedule changes, but I usually keep it around that.
Okay. Let's talk real quick. Sleep importance. Your thoughts on how important sleep is. How much do you try to get? What's best for you? Um, do you sleep
Well,
well?
obviously, sleep is so crucial for
Mhm.
recovery and performance that's usually the first question. Like, if my athletes come and ask me, like, this hurts or I feel awful or whatever, it's like, well, how'd you sleep? How have you been sleeping? Um, and I think what a lot of people miss is, the older you get, the more you can get away with in terms of not sleeping. But I feel like I'm still young enough, and a lot of the people that I work with or work out with are young enough that, they still need their 8 to 9. And I think that sounds almost ridiculous in a day and age where we kind of glorify overworking and, being
Right.
overly busy and looking at how much I do. But it's so important. I mean, not just for your body, but for like your mental health too. Because usually, if you're not getting enough sleep, that's kind of the first thing that goes, is like that sanity piece almost. So I'm a big believer in trying to get as much quality sleep as you can. Do I necessarily follow it all the time? It depends. I'm usually in bed asleep probably by 10:30 or 11 or so, unless it's a really late game, and then usually up around 5:30,
Wow.
sometimes 6:30. But it kind of just depends on our schedules. We definitely try to prioritize sleep, but we also try to prioritize what we need to get done before we actually go to work, because we know after work it's probably not going to happen. So
Right.
kind of a
Yeah.
balanced system there is trying to get enough sleep, but also leaving us enough time to do what we need to do
Yeah.
to get that stuff done. So
You're right about older people. I still feel they need to get some sleep. I just think they don't, because their melatonin levels have naturally dropped so low that they just can't sleep. But it comes down to, like, kind of what you touched on, is quality of sleep versus necessary hours of sleep. So if you're getting good quality sleep, a person at 5 or 6 hours, hey, that's, as long as you're getting some good, deep sleep, enough, the 3 different levels of sleep. That's great, because that is your recovery. That is,
yeah,
and like you said, a lot of people kind of glorify the fact that, oh man, I only slept 3 hours, and well, it's not the good for recovery. So,
yeah,
and to be and champions, if you interview champions like I'm interviewing you, I mean, you find that they sleep a little more because they need that recovery. So athletes in general, compared to maybe the regular person that doesn't do a whole lot, and a lot of old people aren't doing, if they're retired, sometimes they're not doing a whole lot, so they don't need as much recovery either. But us as athletes definitely do.
yeah.
There's a picture as we move on here to getting down to the last few things here. Another hobby of yours is photography.
Yeah, that's my main model. That's my corgi. Um, I I think I started photography in undergrad. I was really just curious because I like to play with photos in general. So I bought a really old uh, camera, and I learned, all of the different buttons and settings, and made my friends pose for what turned out to be really horrible pictures. And as I kind of went on with it, gradually upgrading gear and getting new lenses and new camera bodies, and spending a little bit on education too, of like how to pose people or how to get people to do genuine interactions. Or so now I call it my side hustle. I do, engagements and family photos and weddings, and just kind of as it comes up. I don't advertise for myself a lot. I'm sure I could be busier with it if I really wanted to be, but I do a lot for friends and family and friends of friends. And then, of course, the corgi has his own Instagram page that I take a lot of photos for. So,
That's cute. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a dog lover too, so I love that. Speaking of photography, this is one of my absolute favorite pictures of you, and I used it in the thumbnail, but there's the whole picture. It's badass,
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah. For like 3 days out of my show, this was taken by Eric Wainwright. He operates out of Portland, and he does a lot of these types of shoots for like the fitness and bodybuilding community. And it was really fun. As you can see, I was very, very tired. I was planning my nap after this, but I do love having had those photos done.
That's great. I just want to throw in the fact that the gym, if you're ever in Portland, the gym I train at is called O'Malley's Gym. It's in Troutdale, Oregon. And it's a 10,000 square foot gym. 4,500 square feet of that is like this bodybuilding area. And 1,000 feet is like the office and supplement store. And then another 4,500 feet is the powerlifting room. And way up high in the powerlifting room is this poster here.
I've been up to O'Malley's once.
Wow,
and,
really?
We were picking up, Mary was selling a squat rack. And so we had bought it and we picked it up.
Okay.
So it's super funny. My meet in February, you know how you scope out your competition and you try to figure out who is who and where they're from. And I had, after the meet was over, I had a gal come up to me and she said she knew who I was and she knew who my dad was. And she said, I train at this gym and his photo is on the wall. Can I show you? And so she trains up at O'Malley. She showed me that photo. And it was such a fun experience because she's like, you're Doyle's daughter. She's like, I'm totally okay, competing with you. Like, this is so cool. And then we ended up taking a couple photos together, and now we kind of keep in touch over Instagram. And she was so sweet too. I was at Nationals competing this year, and she had a training day, and she took a picture in front of my dad's photo and gave me a thumbs up and said, we're all rooting for you. So it's, to kind of circle back to powerlifting, I guess, for a hot second, the community is so awesome. All of us like-minded meatheads just kind of there for one goal, supporting and encouraging and rooting each other on, I think can be really, really cool. It's one of the things I enjoy just about like the energy of going to these meets and meeting new people. I think it's a really cool experience.
The gal you mentioned, her name is Tiana. And
yep.
Yeah, she's a very nice gal. I see her. Her brother actually was one of my coaches when I did professional wrestling. But no, very nice gal, and it's fun watching her train because she gets into serious mode. It's nice to see that, and she speaks highly of you. She mentioned that one of the times I was talking with her. Is there any shout outs or thank yous or anything? I'm gonna bring in a little surprise here in a minute, but I just want, before we get to that, is there any thank yous or are you sponsored by anybody? Anything like that?
No sponsors. It's funny. The husband and I joke, he's like, hey, maybe you can get some sort of sponsorships because you just won a national title. And I was like, yeah, shoot, I don't know what else I need to do. We won a national title, so what's next? But no, I don't have anyone. I just kind of go with gear that I like, or if I have somebody who's supportive of something, I'll try to support them by buying through them or whatever. As far as shout outs, I guess for the husband for training with me and pulling me off a cliff no matter how many times I try to walk off the darn thing myself. And Soren doesn't ask for much. He just kind of does what he does out of the kindness out of his own heart, and he just loves lifting and being around lifters. And then I don't really get a lift with them anymore, but I kind of miss my training partners. There's a group of them that I don't really get to see anymore. So, and then my family too is always kind of jumps head first with me. They're like, okay, you're going to do this. All right, well, we're going to be there at the meet chasing our toddler around. Yeah, it's just an experience, but we tried to club people with the foam roller at the West Coast Open, but yeah, just those people, I think. But yeah, no sponsorship.
I know you have social media. Do you want to plug it, or do you want to kind of keep it personal and not just keep it where you?
I guess on Instagram, I'm SDK Johnson. Okay. And it's the photo is of me deadlifting. So
great. So I have a little surprise. I'm going to bring in someone who was very good friends with your father, and they were roommates in college and stuff like that, but I'll let him talk to you about it. But he's really anxious to speak with you and excited, and And so I wanted to bring him on the show. And it's Ray Hetlage, who has been a prior guest. So let's bring Ray Hetlage in. Hello, Ray.
Todd.
Hey.
Sharaya. Good to see you.
I'm just going to let you two kind of talk and tell stories, and I'm just going to enjoy this part of the show myself as a viewer.
Todd, first, again, thank you for this opportunity. Sharaya, you're a very articulate lady, and you have yourself grounded. Stick with your husband, Bo. I'm glad to see that he backs you. It's important for couples to last, that they engage with each other's interests. And got a wife of 36 years who up with me, and it amazes me how she survived this. But I appreciate her, and particularly in my older years, she's younger than I am, and she keeps me on the straight and narrow, or attempts to. So this is your show today, and I'm going to just kind of open it to you first. If you had any particular questions, you're up to it. Go ahead and fire, and let's see what happens.
Okay. Well, I'm a sucker for stories. I don't have very many of my own, so I love to hear about my dad from other people who have those memories. How'd you meet him?
At Lane Community College.
Okay.
Right. Todd, do you have that?
Yes, I do, actually.
That is kind of my lead in for her. There you go, Sharaya.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, that's me under the bar, and then that's your dad to the right. 16.
Pre-beard era.
Yeah, this was beginning years for us. Your dad weighed 190 pounds there, and I was 165 pounds, and this was in one of our workout weightlifting classes at Lane Community College. That's how we connected, and then it went on from there. But pretty much, I don't want to consume this show of yours, but you have a couple of things that stand out in my mind as far as your dad and I go. And I assume you know that your dad was pretty much raised in Cottage Grove, and we used to go a couple times a month to his grandma's house there in Cottage Grove. And this is why we were going to school. And she loved to cook for of us. And your dad's favorite cookie back then was chocolate chip, and mine was oatmeal raisins, and still is. So each time we came over, she had a bag of each of our favorite cookies home. And her favorite dish, or our favorite dish, was she made homemade noodles, and they were unbelievable. And she would make noodle soup out of it. Anything she cooked there's no restaurant that could touch how she mastered food. But the noodles, the homemade noodles, was amazing to watch her orchestrate through those. So those were moments that I still treasure. Well, and we really loved and respected grandmother, and of course, she took me in just like grandson with Doyle. Then another incident that stands out that I wanted to share with you is one. I don't even remember what day of week it was, but we had just completed finals, And so Doyle and I decided, hey, we need to go out and do a little celebrating. We went to a tavern in Cottage Grove, and I don't remember the name of it now, but we meander in there and we walk up to the bar and grab a stool and sit down. Doyle's favorite drink was Miller's beer. And so he would have a Miller's beer and I would have an ice water. Don't want to see me drink. It's stupid enough when I'm sober. Alcohol just never agreed with me and I never had a taste for it. But we're drinking and all of a sudden this guy comes out of the restroom, walks straight over to me, pulls the stool out from underneath me, and I slam to the floor. Well, before I could get up off the floor, Doyle was out of his stool, went over to the guy, one shot to the face, and the guy was out on the floor. So I finally picked myself up, and I walked over to the guy, and I spit on him. And I said, I bet you don't try that again real soon. And then we went over and we sat back down. Well, a couple minutes later, the guy's got an ice pack on his jaw, and he walks over to me, and I thought, oh, gosh, Doyle, here we go again. But he apologized and shook my hand. So I immediately apologized for spitting on him. It was a reaction. I knew I couldn't whip you, but I thought I could spit on you pretty easy, and it worked. So I remember that so well. And the guy walked out. We never saw him again. But those were just two personal standouts that I recall. But we did work in the hay fields together in the summer, throwing bales of hay. Doyle would do about 3 times what I would do, but I paid at that time, so it was our little summer jobs. So that's what I wanted to share with you, and I do want to thank you, Sharaya, for allowing me to come in and interrupt your show. Obviously, you didn't need any help. You are extremely articulate and shows that your schooling really paid off for you. You can see that I stumble a lot, but that's what a GED will do for you. I was never much on education. My specialty was always personality and trying to get by being a real almost clown type guy, but outgoing in terms of treating people and not judging them, and not classifying them into what I thought an individual should be. I tried to accept every individual. So with that said, I want to close by saying to you, your training sounds like you're well in control of it, and I like your preparation thoughts. And I would close by saying, stay strong, and you take each meet separately. I never really looked back much, especially if I had a bad meet. Didn't let that discourage me, and it sounds like you have the same mindset. That meets behind you, you're moving forward. So I'm honored, proud to be able to meet. Pardon me. To meet you. I think we did meet at when we inducted.
Mm-hmm. I believe you were wearing a brown or light tan suit.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's me right by the podium there, and your mother, and so and I didn't engage much there because it. When it comes to your God, I can't hold it together.
No, you're fine.
Well, anyway, that's how much he meant to me, and we were two individuals could get with both our training and our personal lives. So it was a blessing for me to know him, and it is now a blessing to have met you and to see that you're doing well. And God bless you, and have successful meets. He is, as I stated in my interview, was your body isn't feeling right. Don't hesitate to do a light workout instead of a heavy workout, and read your body. And of course, that's what you do for a living. So you're in a good state of mind and a good position. So thank you, Sharaya, for this opportunity. And Todd will keep me posted. If you ever need to get in touch with me, see Todd. I don't give my number out because I don't want to be bothered. But family, he can give that to you. And if anything that I could do to help, you let me know. But you've got Sorensen in your corner. How much else you need? He's a fantastic human being and a terrific powerlifting guru. So you're doing well, and to your husband, Bo, thank you for giving us this opportunity to steal your wife for a little bit and for her to be able to pass her knowledge on to other females who may be interested. So, Brother Todd, love you.
Well, hang on. You're not going anywhere. I'm not turning you loose yet. First of all, maybe she has a couple more questions, but there was one thing, we'll come back to that in a second, I wanted to show here. This was the original records established in 1976. I don't know. Can you guys see that okay? It's on your
probably can.
Okay. Anyway, it's got your name on there representing the U.S. Coast Guard at 198.
Oh, yeah.
Doyle,
okay.
Doyle,
I got you.
Okay, now Doyle down there at super heavyweight class. So these were, you can see the years, and at that point he's at Salem Health Club. Either he was training at a place called the Salem Health Club, or that's what he called his garage. Sharayah will have to fill us in here in a minute. But these were the first ever powerlifting records here in the region. So I thought that was pretty interesting and wanted to show that. They, like Ray, for years, they didn't even put your hometown. They just put U.S. Coast Guard. So you can tell they were just kind of getting things, or the gym that you represented at that time. So they were just kind of really just getting organized. And you can see there wasn't a whole lot of them at that point. But I thought that was really, really interesting. Something that dates back that far, because that's as of, it says right there, I think 1976. So
yeah.
Do you have any comments on that, Ray? Do you remember that at all, Ray?
That was good. No.
Okay, well.
I didn't even remember what my records were. But, and I move on. When I never look back, I keep looking forward. And so when the powerlifting was done, the trophies I got rid of, and like I said, but they were great years, and they consumed a lot of my time with powerlifting and the training. So they were great years.
Well, I wanted to show you also Sharaya's tattoo she has, which is really neat. Well done on that, huh?
Oh yeah, that's him.
The trees were a tribute for his career in logging and Christmas trees, and then I wanted to find a way to incorporate the bear from his old logos, but I didn't really want the big scary bear. I really kind of wanted to find something that was a little bit more at peace. And then the bar is actually pretty special to me because the artist used his 903 pool as direct reference.
Oh,
and if you look close enough too, he even put chalk marks on the bar from where his hands were.
Jeez.
Wow.
So this is one of those big important ones to me.
Yes. Wow. Yes, well done. Yes.
But she may have another couple questions for you, but I just want to have you, Ray, go over what you can remember. So think for a second. The original Kennedy's gym. Do you have any idea? She mentioned a garage, but then did it go to a place? When did it first officially open as a gym? Do you remember?
I remember. I can visualize the setting. It was in a mall.
Okay.
And it was not. I can't think of in Kaiser, and it was right off a main drag leading into Kaiser. And
Off of Cherry? Does that sound about right?
Or, off of where?
Off of Cherry.
Cherry, no.
I think there's I live right next to it now, and I think that right now it's got like a Pizza Hut and a sub shop and like tactical gear on the other side. But that was where my mom had said one of the first ones were.
Okay. Yeah, I just remember.
So Ray, the one you guys all trained at, and again, this is 1982. Do you remember? Was this the second one then, or the?
Yeah. Yeah,
it was. Okay.
Yes. Because Doyle had revamped this strictly for the serious powerlifters. But the first one was just to get things underway and for him to get a place where we could all gather. And then it wasn't. I think it was like a year or so. I can't remember on that one. And then when we went to this one, we just showed where all the serious lifting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How often did you go down there?
Were
you there?
I mean, it was Saturday for me.
Yeah.
You know, with my team, we'd go down. But when we were in school, college, and prior to the real deep powerlifting way, we were together every day.
So if this was the second one, then the third one was the one that was really small, and I think that's where Soren was being trained by Doyle at that point. Does that sound right?
Anything sounds right at this stage.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, Sharaya, did you have anything else for Ray to talk about?
Besides the two stories you had already mentioned, do you have a favorite memory of him?
Yeah, I do. And my favorite memory is that he was such a great human being, and he was such a humble guy. And we were good for each other because I was a clown and he was more serious and grounded. But we just hit it off together at Lane Community, and we went through several trial training facilities before he finally went out on his own and got his own gym, which then really pulled us all together in terms of the powerlifting, and it was definitely a powerlifting den. His memory is one of family. We were family together, and it was tough. I couldn't even go to his funeral. I just couldn't bring myself to the realization that it was done. But again, he's one of the best friends I've ever had, and we had great times. We had great meets together. We did a lot of good traveling together. So it was
Mom had his world record loaded on the bar at the back of the church at his funeral.
Wow.
I don't
Right.
remember seeing it, but
That would have finished me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, they didn't come any better than Doyle as a person and as a teammate and just as a human being to keep everybody grounded, no matter how great you thought you were yourself. He reminded you that it's going to last forever. Somebody's going to jump in there and you're going to be history. And that's the way sports goes.
what was he like when he was training or lifting?
Doyle was nothing but focus, and he didn't put up with any side activities. In terms of there was no groups gathering. We were there together, and it was his place. We respected that, and we trained. I still was myself, but before and after training. Once we started training, it was all on our mission to prepare ourselves. And I still work out today that way. Once I start, I don't answer a phone. I go through my little workout uninterrupted and focused. And that's why I am still at 74, the machine that I am. Oh, it takes a lot more tune-ups these days than what it used to. But yes, your dad was extremely focused and extremely dedicated, not only to the training, but to the lifters themselves. And he always had time for any of us. He and I just happen to have a little stronger bond than most. And it was great. Loved it.
Ray, when you walked into the Doyle's gym and you went into that back room area, because the pictures I showed, that was the back room area. There was the forefront of the gym also. When you walked into that back room, let's just say on a Saturday, and you had personalities like, like Steve Knight, who was very focused and didn't talk a lot. We had guys like you who joke around a lot, especially, if you were fired up. You do a lot of joking. Then you had guys like Bill Kepler who were just crazy, insanely. You'd look over and he'd be chewing. This is something that occurred when I was there. He had the vacuum in his hand that Doyle would use to vacuum the chocolate, and he'd be chewing on it for no apparent reason. He'd be chewing on the vacuum, and so there'd be all kinds of stuff like that going on. That atmosphere when you walked back there, how did Doyle keep all that contained with all those different personalities? I only named 3 different personalities right now, and there was an array of them. In such a strict, serious atmosphere, was there certain rules you had to follow when you went back there?
Yes.
Talk about that. Just that a little bit.
We were there for the purpose of working out, and that's why we all got together, because the setting was then all the same. Everybody had the same purpose. And that's why the gym was split in half. The power lifters in the back, and his regular health club type training was done up front. Right. And Doyle, he just wanted to respect him because he was Doyle. He was the man, and he was powerlifting. And so it didn't take much once he welcomed you into the club. You knew what your mission was, and that was to train. And I put everything else aside in terms of my personality and focused on training and the workouts. Even Kepler, the wild man, he knew that he was going to hang with us, that he had to respect Doyle's setting, and had to respect the fact that Doyle wanted to train. Once we started training, or work out rather, you didn't do anything else but work out. Then afterwards, you kind of loosen. My personality is every day is a holiday for me. It still is, and I've said that, and I like keeping things light. and I don't get too deep into politics or such. I just take it one day at a time. But like I say, uh, respect for Doyle and what he was doing for us and support. And, we all respected that. So it was easy to control us because we wanted to be there with the man. Pretty simple.
Well, let's delve just a little deeper if everybody's doing okay on time. When you would go there, Doyle would obviously be deadlifting himself on Saturday deadlift. Would
Yes.
he program your guys' workouts for that day, or how did that come in? Did
Well,
he?
we had a routine. We all did the same. We all started out with the same number of reps to warm up.
Okay.
We all did the same warm up routine, and then we went in and we did our workout. And of course, we all. And he insisted that you don't try to keep up with the guy next to you. You train sensibly to your limits. But when we're going to do sets of five, we do sets of fives, and then we go to triples. And we were all doing the same routine together, structured.
Would he pick your numbers?
No. The only time Doyle picked our numbers was in the meet.
Mm.
Would watch, he could look at your first lift and tell you what you were capable of doing for a second. He had that talent. When we did singles now, leading up to the meet, about 3 weeks prior to a meet, we would go in and we would do warm-ups, and then we would do single lift. Did those. He picked those poundages for you. And but other than that, he wanted us to know our bodies and our limit. Yeah. And so we did our own picking. But in a meet, that's a whole different ball game. Fortunately, I was a meet lifter. Meets were better for me than training. I never really had a meet where I didn't do a personal best in one of the lifts. Yeah, we were there to train, and that's what we did. And Doyle let us read our own body and make our own decisions on the lift and beat. Doyle pretty much was in control because he was watching and he knew what your potential was for the next lift.
Yeah,
he was right on the money about 90% of the time.
I like the fact that you said he let you kind of learn your own body, because I think that's missing a lot today with lifters. I know so many of them that I'll ask them, well, what are you lifting today? What's your next workout? What's your next deadlift workout going to consist of? Oh, I don't know. I got to wait for the numbers from my coach. It's like, well, wait a minute. You should have those now so you're visualizing them and right. Preparing for them and again, going over them in your mind, and learning your body. If you miss something, you should learn from that yourself. And I don't think there's as much self-learning today. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a coach. Don't get me wrong. To kind of critique your form, put you up on a basic plan, but have some guidelines to follow. But you have to learn your own body. And I think it was a little better in the older days for that, because we didn't have so many references to go to. There wasn't a whole lot of personal trainers and YouTube videos to go watch. And so we relied so much on studying I always say studying the masters and emulating the champions, but yet taking that information, like I would get from going to Doyle's on Saturdays and watching and learning, I would take that and then apply it on my own in the gym myself, and that's how I became the best lifter that I could possibly be for my potential. And I don't know, it's just my thoughts anyway. But that's my questions for Sharaya. Did you have more for Ray? Anything else?
I don't think so at this point. I do hope that the current climate changes, and at some point maybe we can, share a meal or hang out or sometime, and swap some more stories and just have conversations about lifting outside of the podcast. But
you represent your dad well. I'm impressed
I try.
with you. Yes, exactly. And I wish you all the luck, not only with your powerlifting, but with your family life and your career. You've done it right, got your master's, and so you've got your education to go along with your physical skills, so you're mentally and physically sound. And if you would, for me, tell your husband, Bo, is that his name, Bo? Husband? Uh, Tell him he's got a jewel, and
I'll remind him. Don't worry.
And not to lose track of that. Uh, you know, and we can be stupid sometimes when it comes to relationships because we just don't get emotionally involved normally. But we all need a good wife, and I'm blessed to have one. And Bo's got one. He needs to hang on to that and know that has to be a priority. So it's God, family, and then everyday life. God bless you. Stay strong. Todd, love you, brother. Thank you for letting me interject in her show. And
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sharayah, thank you. Thank you for letting me interrupt your show. And I'm so proud to meet you. You've got a great legacy with your dad there. So.
Thanks. At the end of the day, I strive to be a human being that he would be proud of. That's kind of one of my driving forces.
I don't know you that well, but what you've delivered today tells me that you are on that track and you absolutely represented Dad well today, and you represented yourself well. And,
thank you.
You're on your way. You're welcome.
Yeah, I like how she's continuing his legacy and along with carving out one of her own, because she's, bringing it to another level herself. So it's just awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
One of my friends and nap time.
What's that?
Oh, I was going to say my friends and former training partners. Her name is Beth, and she probably paid me one of the best compliments I've gotten. She told me that I have a heart for others and that I strive to always be the hardest worker in the room. And so that's kind of something that I guess I want other people to remember or think of me as well. So kind of going back to what I leave behind. That's what I hope people think too.
Well, I think you emulate that, and that's the great mindset, and that is typical of our sport. At least back in our day, that was it. Nobody walked around like they were the king of the sport. We all respected each other. We all rooted for each other. We all wanted to see each other do well. But I just wanted everybody behind me on the list so that I could get my trophies. But no, it was we changed hands back and forth all the time on who was in the record spot. So you are. I just can't emphasize enough. I'm watching and listening to you and Todd before I interjected in your show. I was highly impressed, and I kept thinking to myself, this young lady is grounded, not all aspects. So I'm pleased that part of this. It's still nap time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ray, for coming on into the program. I really added a lot, and I know she had some questions for you, and to be able to talk about that on the show means a lot to me too. I love it. So thank you.
Oh yeah.
And you and I will be in touch. Oh,
stay strong. One day at a time. One workout at a time.
All right, Ray.
All right,
I'll say bye for now, and I'll be in touch, man.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Sharaya, before we wrap up here, there's a couple of things I'll show. This is from the chat box. This is from actually my ex-wife. Thank you, Sharaya, for joining the program today. She actually was the first female in the Northwest to bench press 300 pounds in competition. So, and she ended up
The
doing
name
it.
sounds very, very familiar to me.
Yeah. So she was excited that you were going to be on the show when I had emailed her and told her about it. And then looks like my mom is watching. Todd, you sure know how to choose wisely when choosing your guests. Impressing young woman and so interesting and poised. And I will agree with that.
Oh, good.
It truly has been an honor for me to have you on the show. I mean, when I reached out to you originally, I didn't know if you'd be up for it or not. And I appreciate you trusting me to interview you and ask the right questions and all that. And especially since it's a pretty new podcast show, like I said, episode 7. I never, as a 165 pounder competing in my first contest in 1981 and going and watching the West Coast Open, 1981 West Coast Open, and seeing all those monsters, I never in my lifetime would have ever guessed I would be interviewing the daughter of the godfather of Northwest powerlifting, Doyle Kenady. And it truly has been an honor for me. And I thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
All right. Well, I'll be watching you through your social media and sending you a lot of really good vibes for your contest.
Thank you.
And I just thank you so much. And I'll say
Of
goodbye
course.
for now.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, Sharaya. Yeah, you
Bye.
betcha.